Welcome to How to Rock Spirit's Cosmic Consciousness audio series, a collection of spiritual, scientific, and psychedelic musings by Pluto's Corona, a Leo rising Scorpio with Sagittarius moon, born in the year of the metal ram. Pretty much all of these audio entertainments have been a collaborative effort between myself and my friend and producer Al Ginsberg. It is our belief that the truth and everything that can be known is already out there, and we're not here to explain it, we're here to explore it together. For more far-out discussions about spirit, alchemy, psychedelics, yoga, and cosmic intelligence, visit my YouTube channel, How to Rock Spirit, where you'll find a slowly growing database of all of Ram and Dog's psychedelic blogs and audio recordings. Take your time and enjoy the ride, folks, and we'll meet you on the other side. So, a while back, I wrote out this little article that tackled what I perceived to be a common misunderstanding regarding the purpose and meaning of astrology. This is a question that astrologers are asked a lot, and I thought I might be able to put my 2 cents in to try and clarify the issue a little bit, however I can. The question is this, simply put: is astrology predetermined? Or fatalistic? That's another word that's often used to describe it. And is it a negative sort of predeterminism? I mean, assuming that we humans are spontaneous in all our actions, aren't I more infinitely expansive and uncontainable than any plan the stars can devise for me? And the answer is yes, you are. You have infinite power and potential. You can be anything this time around. But how are you going to express that potential? How are you going to creatively channel that potency into finite reality for real purpose, in a way which relates effectively with your fellow creative beings, and in a way which is its most effective, which really lights you up? In other words, how are you going to express your potentials in a way which is ergonomically fitted to the design of your own nature, in the same way that water just flows downhill with no mind, without thinking about it? Well, I suppose you might think that you could just be like all the other animals on the planet, like the bees, who just bee all over the place spontaneously, or like a flower that just grows automatically without thinking about it. Whoop, there it is, look at it go, I flowered. Can you be that spontaneous? The problem with us humans, which is also, that's the thing which makes us different from animals and plants, and I'd say it also makes us special and beautiful. Our problem is that we have minds, which become synthetically attached to the world of ideas and the environmental conditioning outside of our own brain matter. It's mainly our minds which make us different. I mean, let's say a fart is the most spontaneous expression we could possibly achieve. You don't really think about it so much. It's just that a bit of gas just seems to have built up for a little while down there, and then whoop, excuse me, whew, don't know where that came from. Now you would think that that expression would be a part of our nature. It's as spontaneous as it gets. It's a biological bowel movement. But it is considered socially inappropriate for you to pass gas when you are around other people, of course, because you don't want them to have to smell what you had for dinner last night while you're talking to them. There's a social fabrication there that is getting in the way of that natural animal impulse. I mean, you don't see humans just shitting wherever they want or all over the place and just dropping a dookie right there in the middle of conversation without going away somewhere private to get that animal instinct out of the way where no one can watch. So now, when I ask whether you are being truly spontaneous or not, your inclination may be to say, why, of course, Dustin, I'm being spontaneous right now. I'm doing what I'm doing without thinking about it. And sure, it may seem that way, in the same way that a goldfish may assume that he has all the freedom in the world without realizing that it is actually a fish caught in a glass bowl. Look, you fool, says the goldfish. See me waving my fins? See me breathing through my gills, making faces? I'm just responding to your question spontaneously. Now, if I ask that goldfish to travel over here to where I am, outside the confines of its little glass bowl, it would probably respond with some wisecrack remark like, well, that's not very spontaneous, is it? My nature, after all, is what I do without thinking about it, and what I am is a fish caught in a bowl. So if you come up to me and ask me to do anything outside of what I am, what I've been all my life, I wouldn't really be very spontaneous, would I? I would be acting on some synthetic idea of yours, which you've put in my head. Going outside this bowl is not in my nature, after all. Of course, if only the goldfish would try it out, it might come to find that its true spontaneity is not contained by the glass bowl it has been caught in its whole life. There could be more nature in there, which has only been veiled by the subconscious fabrication that it is a fish caught in a bowl. Now think about this in terms of asking someone to read about their astral signs. Well, that's not me, they say, looking for every excuse they can to be skeptical. Which is not a bad thing, really. Skepticism has its place, but, you might miss out on opportunities by being too skeptical. That's not me, they say. That's not what I am. That's just a bunch of words on a page. What I am is this. Watch me. Watch me do some laps around this little fishbowl of mine. Trust me, I've been doing this my whole life. This must be what I am. But don't you know, little goldfish, that somebody put you in that bowl? That the social constructs and your parents and teachers and your environment that you were born into have crafted the personality that you have been perpetuating since before you can even remember donning the mask? Some of it is natural, sure. We're all a little different within the social box that we're all collectively placed in our culture and society. But how can you be sure of what parts of your personality are truly spontaneous and what parts of it are the concave walls of a little glass bowl? We all run these hardwired brain programs that are inflicted upon us during our youth for survival as well as social reasons. It is biologically important for us to eat and shit and sleep and trim our toenails and do all these physical maintenance things for survival purposes. These all represent hardwired brain programs that we have to do regardless of our social circumstance. But we also have social reasons for our actions. We don't want to look bad to the other denizens of our tribe, after all, because our tribe is a genetic extension of our ability to thrive, an externalized function of our collective gene pool's desire to continue on and to keep evolving, keep perpetuating. If we act so weirdly that we become a social outcast, we lose out on the benefits of being a part of the club. When you're a part of a club or a tribe, you don your colors and you have emotional territorial security. You are a part of the land that somebody owns. You're not an alien. And you might even get to eat with everybody else without fearing that someone will come along and stab you in the back and steal your resources. So socio-tribal connections also serve a biological purpose. Our social actions are almost as hardwired into us as our biological needs are, because they are contained by biological need. We need to feel a part of a group in order to feel a sense of security and freedom. So if you want to stick with the tribe, you'd better keep all those animal impulses of yours locked up in your backpack where no one can see them. Because if you shit on the table while everyone else is trying to eat there, you might not be asked back the next time the tribe eats dinner, and you'll have to fend for yourself, and you'll lose the benefit of traveling in a pack. Humans have survived for so long because we got around in packs. We don't have fur or claws or, ingenious ways of communicating with the plant world for food, like many other animals do. So if you act out of line with the rules of the tribe, you won't thrive nearly as well as those who are in the social construct, because you miss that backerboard of security. You miss out on genetic extension. Your flanks are exposed, and all your energy is wasted on trying to keep 10 in all directions at all times. If you have someone watching your back and your flanks, then you can rest and pay more attention to what's directly in front of you, and invest more energy into your natural talents and potentials for contributing to the greater tribe. Since we have come from wandering nomadic consciousness, we've arrived to a point where everyone gets around in packs and tribes. We've evolved to a state which includes the added bonus of contributing something to society which really speaks to our true inner resources and ingenuity from within. We all have our own genius in some planetary orientation or another, which gives an evolutionary edge over others in that particular field. Everyone has a talent which disposes them to strengths in some operation, be it mental figures, math, perseverance, adaptability, diplomacy, raw mammal strength and drive, craftiness, intellect, intuition, creative innovation, artistry, etc. This is really a dialectical thing, like maybe a genetically large person is inclined to be physically territorial and their strength is a crutch, which reduces their need to be crafty. Whereas if someone is born a smaller, feebler person, they have to evolve an ability to be crafty, street smart, and intelligent in order to compensate for their physical weakness, relatively speaking. And that's why these two types of personalities can get along really well with each other. Like Timon and Pumbaa, or kind of like those little birds that get to take a ride on a rhinoceros. The rhino protects the bird, and the bird, in turn, eats all the annoying bugs on the surface of the rhino. This is what makes communism so enticing. In a communal style of society, since everyone's basic needs are taken care of, we need only to focus on what we can contribute to the tribe according to our own spontaneous advantages and inner talents from within. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. You have to bridge your inner spontaneity with the order, structure, and law of the tribe, the fishbowl of the society in which you live. If you didn't get the memo about the cosmic joke and you do not catch on to the give and take nature of this game, then either your obnoxious spontaneousness will ruin your chances of staying within the safety and security of the tribe, or else the tribe will ruin your chances of being truly spontaneous and spiritually free. It'll smother out your spirit. Now, everything I've said up to this point is indeed very interesting, regardless of one's spiritual beliefs, but I'm going to try to weed back to our original point in our discussion, which was the question of the meaning of karma and the spiritual nature of astrology. As we initially said, there is always a question in regards to astrology of whether it is deterministic or whether we can actually have a spontaneity within the astrological box that we read about whenever we peruse any sort of text that describes our personal astrological signs and symbols. The stars don't define me, I define me. My tribe defines me. This fishbowl that I've been living in defines me. And, well, since you claim to be spontaneous and to have free will, the question again remains, how are you going to constructively channel that free will in a way that affords you a true spiritual spontaneity, which is free from socially constructed unconscious habits and limitations, and in a way which is harmonious to all us other mortals living around you without us bumping into each other? Will you use accepted empirical sciences and social facts as your standard for the best theory of your own personal existence, even though science is constantly transgressing? Society, too. Or will your dance be one of cosmic ecstasy, one which transcends the culture and technology of any time by being fitted to your true spirit within, your true will? Before we continue, I have to say a few crucial key words regarding the nature of this thing we call spirit. When I talk about spirit, what I mean with this word, literally, is the idea that is implied when someone talks about getting into the spirit of something. Like the spirit of Christmas. Come on, man, don't be a Scrooge. Get into the spirit of it. Try to be instantaneously happy about enacting the rituals and ceremonies. Don the gay apparel and sing some Christmas carols. Try the gravy. Have a glass of wine. Let yourself go. In other words, don't force yourself into it. Don't be like a bump on the log just doing all these things to win social favor, because we will smell that fakeness on you. Spirit can tell where spirit doesn't dwell. It's like a black smudge on our collective, colorless, ecstatic letting go. Something's in the way of the flow of the river, you know? You're better off going home and being a Scrooge than doing it all with the sour puss and bumming the rest of us out. Get into the spirit of it already. Surrender into the silly memes and classic faux pas of the holiday. Drop the ball. It only comes once a year. You can't fake the spirit, because if you fake it, then it is neither joyous nor spontaneous. It is an ideological construct that you are merely wading through, with no sense of wonder, passion, or subconscious edge. Orgasms are among the most spiritual release one can attain, and you can't fake one. Well, you can fake it for your partner, but not for yourself. To get into the spirit of erotica is to let yourself melt into the bliss that is being prepared for you, to release into a sexual ecstasy which eclipses your consciousness and slips you into a state of complete psychosomatic fusion and withdrawal, if only temporarily. This is a powerful thing, of course, because it affords a period, however small, of a state of rest and release, which you cannot reconstruct and sustain consciously for yourself, since ecstasy implies the pressure of another. The only exception to this is those who are trained in some very high-end transcendental meditation practices. And even with that, it usually takes a long time to put oneself into the kind of trance where you can achieve that state of ecstatic release in an autoerotic way. The orgiastic impulse is spiritual because it implies a surrender into the metamouth of the psyche. It involves a level of consciousness beyond the linear, strategizing mind, where one's unconscious impulses are stripped naked, raw, and defenseless behind all the muscular armoring and tension through which we regularly organize our lives. There's a spontaneity and Zen reality there which cannot be faked, which is the principle of being ergonomically fitted to the design of our total being, in the same way that scissors are ergonomically designed to fit the human hand, or like a glove. Now imagine if the whole of your waking life, your job, your identity, your social group, fit your spiritual impulse and nature in the same way that a pair of scissors fits a human hand. How would you go about organizing your reality in a way which opens you up to such a relaxed, graceful ease, where every action embodies that orgiastic release potential and has an ergonomic design that befits the spontaneous way of your meta-soul within, the metamouth of your psyche? That, if you ask me, is exactly what true spirituality is all about. It is not an abstraction fabricated within the naive mental projections of the ego, which neglects your material responsibilities. It is not the renunciation of worldly action, which is impossible anyway. You can't go live on a mountain and be truly spiritual unless that is your karma, and it may be for some people for a while. But for most of us on planet Earth, especially in the Western Hemisphere, you can't do the mendicant, renunciant trip on a mountain thing without eventually coming back to society with the gift of illumination you attained on the mountain. Because all that spiritual illumination is useless if you don't ground it constructively and pragmatically in material channels. Besides, on a solo mountain trip, you'd be missing out on all the benefits of the tribe we just talked about, having other people to fuse with collectively. True spirituality does not negate materialism. It embraces it. It makes love to it. And the idea of it is that it tries to bridge one's ability to enact their orgiastic spiritedness as much as possible within the confines of biological necessity and the necessity of getting along with those in one's tribe. It's a collective fusion as well as an inner fusion. That's real spirituality. And I like to say, truly, the spiritual end of things usually involves a person clipping in his social construct in a way which causes society to evolve to their level, where they, being a sage, they goad society to also release into their own spiritual nature and potential, instead of crippling the inner spiritedness within the person. That's what you try to do in spirituality. And that's why, psychedelic folks are so willing to be weird, to stick out like a sore thumb to everyone else in their society. The best metaphor I can think of to explain this is Timothy Leary's Eco Scout metaphor of a bee looking for new fields. When a beehive wants to expand its territory, they send out an Eco Scout bee to look for new flower fields. The scout finds the new place, then returns to the hive, and they perform a little dance, which is encoded directions to the new territory. They just kind of have the territory memorized, and they speak in a special cool dance language. And once the other scouts understand the code and the directive, they all go with the Eco Scout bee to find the new territory. And the other bees will go with them, and they'll find a new territory, and the bees will expand and evolve. That will work, so long as that bee doesn't discover a formula for free energy like Nikola Tesla did, because then the CIA will come along and kill him. That's the gap that every psychedelic pioneer has to bridge when they listen to the message in their DNA. If you know Timothy Leary's story, you'll know that he struggled with this too. The true spiritual guru, or Buddha, will always be a sore thumb to the society in which they are born. In olden days, such as in ancient Hindu times, like in India around the time the Bhagavad Gita and the Rig Vedas were written, around the time of the crucible of civilization, where I believe, I don't know the exact period, but I know there was a time when people had a certain preponderance for these spiritual matters. Such alien rascal figures, somebody who, like an Eco Scout bee who went and found this new thing that's can be different from the consciousness of the hive that he's reporting back to. Such strange alien figures would be accepted in society, even if they did come along and shit at the table while everyone was eating. Because the tribe would know that that sage was just being a rascal and trying to enliven the mechanical construct of society with this ecstatic spiritual impulse and, being Zen, trying to make them think outside the box. I like to think of the science of true spirituality in terms of what I call hedonic engineering. How does one engineer their material lives in a way which can afford the greatest hedonic happiness possible, both personally as well as transpersonally or collectively, or even ecologically, to include animals and plants? Of course, hedonism is a word which has lost its original meaning through the annals of time, but I mean it in the sense of the ultimate happiness principle, which includes biological pleasures and ecstatic psychological release. Thus, as I see it, spiritual science and hedonic engineering are basically synonyms for each other. I simply like the term hedonic engineering because it implies a pragmatic bridge between spirituality and materialism. But I digress. So, everyone who hears about cosmology in the Western Hemisphere tends to resist it with a rebellious, sovereign air, as we tend to only be concerned with our ideological sovereignty and liberty as the prevailing issue of interest. The only law which we care to live by is the law of the land, the law of our tribe which gives us our freedom, the capitalist freedom to destroy and consume whatever we will within socially accepted boundaries. It's okay if we destroy forests or work some foreigners to the bone over in China to make cheap jeans, so long as we don't harm our immediate neighbors. In any case, I'm trying to get metaphysical here. There's hardly any deeper metaphysical ethic for us. Over here, we're like a frantic rich woman with a closet full of shoes and no clear choice what to wear. We are a vast countryside of riches and fertile soil, with no concept of how to connect each person's soul to the land in a way which conducts the highest possible ratio of spiritual passion to material expenditure for each person. This attitude is fairly polarized from what might be called the stereotypical Eastern mind's tendency to obtain a workable slot, a niche or a role in their society. These are kind of extreme generalizations. I'm presenting the East and West this way to elucidate this broad dialectical principle. The Eastern mind being more willing to surrender to a role, and the Western mind being against that sort of being pinned down. The West is young, the new land, at least from our historical perspective. Of course, the natives of our land have a quite different perception of it than we alien white folks do. When you think about it, we're kind of like a young boy or girl who is just learning to dance. Initially, the attitude for anyone new to dancing is to throw caution to the wind. Who cares to learn the steps anyway? There are no steps, we tell ourselves, idealistically. The unfettered motions of my inner heart's spontaneous expression are truer than the finest choreography. And this is, of course, a very refreshing and flowing attitude, compared to the sternness of rigidity and form which characterizes the attitude of a seasoned elder. The elder's on his way out, looking rather desperately for some sort of substance and value in things, while the youth is only just recently left home, recklessly bursting forth to discover the formula for life, and to innovate by negating the limits set by the elders. Yet both are two sides of the same coin, two directional attitudes for the same lesson of how to use our planetary energy effectively. Is the youth's devil-may-care spontaneity of heart the only course to truth? Many Zen Buddhists seem to give off the impression that it is so. There's a billowing Gnostic movement in the historical annals of philosophy which point in another direction, however. Namely, this other direction is aimed neither inward, where the spontaneous heart is, nor outward toward empirical form and law, but rather nayward, woo, toward a transcendental cosmic center. Such a third limb must exist between these two directional attitudes, for indeed, how can the youth improve upon his spontaneous expression with no form to develop on, no evolutionary progress to build on, no structure, nothing to build? And yet, how can the elder grow if they do not let go of the past and learn to be spontaneous and effortless, to teach an old dog new tricks, as it were, to innovate spontaneously? Yes, you are infinitely more potent than any plan the stars can devise, for mind is limitless. Yet the irony of this statement is the confounded, mortal perspective implied in it. It is in fact our infinite potency within, our so-called inner limitlessness, our perceived cosmic independence and spiritual disconnect from material nature, delusory though it may be, which is exactly our problem in the West. There's no proper metalogical irrigation or canal works for the deliberate, distinct expression or refinement of our specific energy patterns for Western civilians regarding the soul. This is due to our egoistic concentration to the point of blindness on being completely, idealistically sovereign, free individuals to be subject to no social rule, caste, or duty. And this may be a viable political theory, but it should not be taken into cosmology. For as Alan Watts says, there is no democracy in the kingdom of heaven. There are inherent laws and universal objects that no amount of democratic bureaucracy could ever change. 1 + 1 will equal 2, no matter how the subjects dissect it. And one's unconscious nature unfolds according to metaphysical axioms based on a genetic chain link of every action that came before it. The metaphysical reality of the self, of past genetic action, has specific data associated with it, a specific karma, or else it would not be. We wouldn't be individuals, we would all be the same. Without DNA memory, man's mind is a blank canvas on which mere shadows are cast. Each person is unique because we are not all one on the planet, even though we are through the lens of subtler energy vistas, We're all the same Buddha eye within, running around and trying to scare itself to see if it can make itself jump out of its own skin, as Alan Watts used to say. Everyone in our culture wants a white picket fence, a breezy blue-collar job, a car in the driveway, and all the time in the world to watch other people do amazing things on TV and the internet. The illusory state of ideological liberty, which we worship in the West, has caught us in a snare of profound stagnance, because since everyone here is on the planetary dance floor flailing their limbs without a care for anything or anyone but what they perceive to be their own heart's spontaneous expression, no one is catching on to the fact of the fishbowl, and no real impressive dancing or evolutionary soul progress is being made. The imbalance of contending forces has dissolved the evolutionary purpose, that necessary third figure. The dance cannot develop because we lost track of the refinement half of dancing. Any persona, any sleeve or channel of form, duty, work, or discipline is the very channel which each person's inner potency must be realized through. Spirit leans on the fulcrum of genetic nature for expression, and without individuality or talent, without earnest worldly work and sacrificial or sacred action, we are all just spiritually masturbating without giving anything back with any real grit or bite to it, no transcendental edge. We're all spending our energy in a socially fabricated mechanism which does not provide for that spiritual inner ecstatic release principle. Thus, we are missing out on the dynamic potential of ecstasy. It is only the naive young ego, which presumes to be greater than the nature of things, that assumes that its spontaneous action is greater than any supposed archaic wisdoms and forms which have ideally always existed in the universal mind. Astrology is such a form, a cosmic meta-duty or role, with an ironically similar purpose as the sovereignty that we boob-tube-watching, liberty-seeking Westerners strive for. I like that word, actually, boob-tube. It's like we're sucking at material sensations' teats because we can't find our own replenishing soul food within. We seek mental and neurological ease and sensation in the new world and find only material limits. Because we identify with no deeper will, no cosmic mold or archetype to submit ourselves to or against, we have no available channels of spiritual intention to invest our energy in, no karma to expand out of, and thus we stagnate. We just work within the fishbowl we've always been in and stuff more and more fast food down our throats and watch more and more movies to fill the hole we feel in our inner midst. We lack personal direction collectively. It is true that some lucky people may get a sense of how to exist with some splendor and social respect simply by living in an organic, uncalculated way, especially if they're born in a rich family. Unfortunately, we don't live in a classless society, and in capitalism, there's always way more rich folks attached to a dynastic family line than the vast majority of poor people below the poverty line. But even for the lucky middle classes and above, they might still lack true gnosis or genuine self-awareness of their karma at the level of deepest identity, if they refuse to face the mystery of the dark side of the moon, whose secret shadow is always there. The richest men in the world can never be satisfied with all the novelty their money can produce, until they try living with some kind of edge that is beyond their power. Because, as I said, ecstasy must always come from the pressure of something outside of yourself. You cannot dissolve yourself. You cannot sit in a vault full of all your gold and just force yourself to be happy. They don't necessarily need to lose the money. They just need to transform the person they have always been, to find some kind of ecliptic edge. And that's tough to do when you're a millionaire with financial responsibilities. The ego will always be contained by the walls of karma until the walls are cognized and slowly dissolved with hard work, the hardest work you can possibly imagine. And that's the practice of true Kundalini yoga and inner awakening. Figuratively speaking, since we appear to have so many options available for us in the technologically advanced state of the Western world, what with internet and technology and millions of Walmarts all over the country, as I said, we're like someone with 1,000 shoes to choose from and no idea of where to start, because there are so many options in the material world. Since we don't know what shoes to wear, we don't show up to the party at all. Astrology is like your memory, whose instinct seeks novelty for bliss. It chimes in and says, "You wore pink all last week. You've been this and that your whole life. Your parents' and society's ideas for who you ought to be are not exactly in keeping with who you truly are. Now it's time for you to try something novel, something which you've actually been inside the whole time, but which you've always ignored. Now it is time to do what no astrologer has ever dared to do, to attempt to devise an atomic materialist conception for how astrology and karma work as a synthesis of empirical science and mysticism." And it's going to come out through the Dustin Cormier way. So anyway, I hope I can make it convincing as possible anyway. So here goes. Astrology presumes a conscripted role for one's energy, beautifully fitted, at least according to the theory, to the intrinsic talents, destiny, and important lessons needed for the transmigrating soul and the DNA code. The idea is that our DNA is not separate from the planets, as we are not separate from the universe. If only we could identify with the evolving DNA of the universe, instead of seeing ourselves from the perspective of our egos, our labels, and our incidental professions, we would have a far more accurate picture of what karma truly is and of what we truly are as organs of a unified body of energy. We are a seeming individuality contained within an ineluctable unity. Alan Watts was great for painting a picture of the indefiniteness or the lack of definition in our separation from the universe. He was always reiterating that it is all I am. It is all Yahweh. My body, my organism, my universe. Tat Tvam Asi. I am that. It is me. The universe is a composite word of uni, meaning one, and verse, meaning song. One song, one love. Therefore, a picture of the planets and the musical notation of the spheres transcribed therein at the moment of your birth is in fact a picture of you. And just as the melody of a song is pre-written before the actual notes are played, so too is the development of your personality in at least broad strokes, written in the code implied by the physical dance of the planets in their orbits after your birth had taken place. Astrology is really just a signifier. The signs are just signs, remember. It's a husk of metadata, the markings in jade that describe the pressures which caused them. It's a signifier. Excuse me. Sorry about that, world. It's a signifier or a totem, a guidepost for the types of experiences a person is living through at the moment in youth when they are very sensitive to the vibrations which mold and develop them. Children are like sponges, They just sop everything right up and fit themselves to whatever they experience, even at very subtle subconscious levels, and it affects their total conception and formation as an organism. Here's a key point. Adults are still affected by the celestial spheres and their cycles as well, in a dialectical sort of way. That's the nature of a cycle. The vibrations of human social meandering are kind of like a winding riverbed. The water that courses in the spheres reflects an impression on the collective psyche. Since parents, teachers, and society on the whole tend to reflect this coherent wave pattern, manifesting as periodic trends and cultural symmetries, a youth in that picture frame of time tends to absorb and pick up the aesthetic traits of that cultural wave, even those reflected by fast-moving bodies like Mars, Mercury, and the Moon. Such waves tend to come in cycles, ideally, in rhythm with the orbits of the planets. Everything comes in cycles. When society has been too liberal for too long, for example, they tend to revert back to conservatism. When they're too speculative for a time, they come back to critical action or empirical science or whatever. It's the dialectic of the motions of the collective psyche. This is said to be reflected in the galactic bodies, or maybe the galactic bodies reflect them. Since we all know from New Ager lingo that classic Gnostic line, the microcosm reflects the macrocosm. What is within is without, and as above, so below. Fibonacci ratio, fractals, you know the whole bit. The tapestry at lower or grosser levels of vibration reflect those at higher levels. So the behaviors and attitudes of our teachers and parents align with these periodic wave developments, which then are, in turn, deposited into the psyche of the impressionable youth at the time. Now we're coming close to bridging the mysterious gap between how mysticism and karmic astrology make inroads to palpable genetic material matter manifestation. And this is the key that keeps every atomic materialist type skeptical about astrology. Biologically speaking, a child develops according to the DNA blueprint created by the seed and egg data of their parents during conception. The function of the natal chart in astrology is sort of like prophesizing the appearance of a butterfly by the shape, tone, and size of its cocoon. It was the caterpillar and its DNA who had gone into the cocoon and developed into a butterfly, but the cocoon reflects the DNA of the caterpillar, just as how, in a cosmic way, it was the sole person conceived by the parents' genetic seed who would come to develop the shape of their astrological cocoon, meaning metaphorically their natal chart, their planets and the astral signs, and even the social fabric which would come to develop their personality. So, confusingly, we have come to a crossroads where it seems that the conception of the person by the father and mother is what caused the planets to rotate around the specific place where they were at when the child was born. Does this make sense? Which came first here, the chicken or the egg? Did the seed code attract the macrocosmic placement of its empirical environment? Or, did the child's genetics prompt the placement of the planets at birth? Or was it vice versa? Well, it is my contention to suggest that in this case, the chicken came first, meaning that the whole constituent totality of the persona in question was conceived even before the parents and their genetic egg data came together in the physical sphere. This may not make sense empirically on the face of it, but I intend to explain it in a satisfactory way through the ancient perspective of Vedic mysticism and karmic destiny. We're really looking at the most basic synthesis of spirit and material here, the closest so far as I know that anyone's ever gotten to the yin and yang, the axes of all axes. So hold on to your butts. This is a picture of astrology as it relates to empirical unfoldment and material reality. The idea is that we all contain the germ of our souls prior to conception. There's a big vat of potential life experience codes somewhere in the ether, and each soul is seeking expression of their own code. So after death, when birth must of course begin anew for the soul, material reality, and one of Brahma, the Hindu creation god's many dream bubbles, material reality, conspires to create the circumstances which fit the code which your soul attracts. And since existence is a quantum digression of infinite possibilities, out of the many sperm which your father could have chosen for your mother's egg when they came together and conceived you in what appears to be a merely coincidental copulation, you were the one chosen, because of course, the whole operation had been conspiring to conceive you in the first place, since you are the arbiter of it all, according to Vedic philosophy. Empirically speaking, your father and mother were just waves and echoes stemming from the Big Bang in a vast materialistic mechanism of arbitrary causality. But secretly, it was all aimed at the creation of you, right from the beginning, And if your soul code was even slightly different, even if it was fitted from a celestial picture, which was just a few minutes off from what you presently are, then the cosmic stork would not have dropped you off here, but would have dropped you off in another one of Brahma's many dream bubbles, in a universe where your parents had held off for just a few minutes instead of getting right to it and stuffing the turkey in the oven. And of course, we all know from the butterfly effect that just those few moments would drive the planets into slightly different angles, thus affecting the macrocosm and thus affecting the microcosm, causing your whole existence to change into something quite different from the plan that unfolded this time around. Ideally, as quantum physics has proposed, both of those potential realities, meaning the you that you are now and the you that you could have been had your parents held off for a few moments, both of these exist somewhere in the nexus of some Euclidean space in some space-time map or another, because the eye of Ra is forever closing, as is the nature of zero or infinity, and every reality that could possibly exist does exist somewhere in some dimensional plane of existence. The quantum idea I'm getting at is like that movie What the Bleep, where the kid's dribbling a basketball, and when you're not looking at the basketball, for all you know, there are an infinite digression of possibilities of where that basketball could be in space, because the kid could be moving around, and all the possibilities exist simultaneously at once until you actually turn around and directly perceive where the ball really is at this particular turn of our space-time nexus. It's like Schrodinger's cat. You stuff a cat in a box, hypothetically speaking, of course, and you won't know if it is suffocated until you open the lid and observe inside the box. Until it is observed and measured, the probability technically exists for every possible answer. Quantum physics has actually done a lot for mysticism by revealing that there are a lot more questions than answers for us in the field of speculative physics and philosophy. That's our halfway break point. Anyway, so that was a lot of fun just now, but before I start to get a headache, I want to veer out of this flaky question of the bridge between biology and mysticism, and return to the question at hand, which is how all of this relates pragmatically and practically to that spiritual ecstasy principle we described earlier. The idea, in my view, is that there's a metalogical mark that all of our actions might be conscripted to, hopefully through negation or deduction, meaning process of elimination when you're studying the signs, rather than positive projection, because when you try to positively project some kind of idea in your head, it makes it kind of like you're forcing it, whereas you want to go through negation, through a process of deduction. So there's a metalogical mark that our actions might be conscripted to that befits the spontaneous nature of the spirit within, or is conducive to that spirit, which is, of course, as axiomatic and guided by genetic data from the past as anything else is. Of course, in the deepest sense, the Buddha's eternally awakened I may be a formless void of emptiness, but that doesn't help our discussion of how our infinite mind can use the genetic dispositions and talent at our disposal to expand ourselves out of our limiting karmas, the cosmic fishbowl which we have unwittingly attracted around ourselves, through the incidental perpetuation of our own egoic set. It's turned into quite a philosophical speculation of mysticism, as it tends to do in my lectures, but my intention is to weed it back into a pragmatic discussion as relates to the attitudes perpetuated by those of us in the Western Hemisphere, and in regards to the idea of surrendering to that spiritual impulse we all have inside, while trying not to get kicked out of the tribe for acting too weird. So I'm going to talk here for a moment about the idea, this idea of surrender, what I consider to be the method of bhakti yoga, in my own words. I first got into this idea through Ram Dass, a key figure in my life who was one of the pioneers of the emerging psychedelic era, well, that emerged around the 1950s, before the 60s. I'm indebted to Ram Dass and his spiritual path. He was born in the year of the metal ram, like me, I'm proud to say. So I'm talking about surrender as it represents the sacrifice of the self to a greater object, being willing to dissolve the ego's or the mind's stranglehold on the movie projector of life, which we perpetuate through instinctive control. The instinct for total control is a hard weed to uproot, but I believe this surrender is a precursor to ecstasy. For me, faith in a deeper object, a consciousness or state, helps to defeat that programmed instinct born of fear, that bestial smothering from mother memory which diverts one's energy from the expression of their divine potential. Surrender and self-sacrifice on the altar of truth leads to faith, and faith leads to magic and realization of higher powers. Maybe a better to use there is intention, the fixity of the will. The intention is the mystic's mark, the crosshairs. In Tai Chi Chuan, earth root power, or peng, comes from magnetically surging oneself into the finishing end of a technique or attack. Not by cultivating and squeezing one's energy step by step through the limbs like a toothpaste tube. The energy has a direct current and from the beginning. It is a fluidity. You learn the movements and then you surrender to them gracefully, like water flowing calmly downstream. Water does not tiptoe. It is in full tidal surrender and abandon with its lover, gravity, all the time. To surrender to a yoga posture, as another example, is necessary to really complete it. Anything you undertake or do with total surrender and abandon will reflect that intention latent within you. The question is, to what ideal or aim will you surrender? What is the pitch of your cosmic roof, your understanding, and your understanding of yourself? People hear the word surrender and they automatically think weakness. And you can't blame them, really. It's a matter of semantics. It's the mind's response to the syntax of the word. But in truth, surrender does not necessarily reflect weakness in every regard. It's the same with sacrifice. The words just have bad connotations, especially for your average skeptical atheist type. Surrender to an ideal is what I'm getting at here, though, just as the skeptic atheist has already surrendered so wholeheartedly to skeptical atheism and the material sciences, or as a soldier has already surrendered to their particular faction, their ideal, their thing that they're going to war for. Surrender to an ideal could be a very powerful thing. The problem is that if you surrender to the wrong thing, you may end up becoming someone's bitch, whether it's God, or your fantasy of truth, or the American government. That's why people freak out about it. Nobody wants to be in chains. But if you can surrender to an ideal, especially a cosmic ideal, such as what symbols, ancestral deities, mantras, yantras, astrology, and other such magical devices of self-realization have to offer, your surrender may invite the same blooming of the soul that a flower does naturally and unthinkingly, just as the grass grows and the wind blows with no mind, no thought, Zen. That is the power of the interception of a symbol. So long as you are not dogmatic about the ideals you surrender to, you can achieve the movement of much energy in powerful and potentially constructive ways. Whether that surrender will lead to positive results is another matter. That's the whole question of aligning one's power harmoniously with that of others. But regardless, this surrender is an essential function of unleashing personal power. Astrology, psychoanalysis, deity worship, symbol meditations, psychedelic sigils, and emotional crying bhakti yoga, worship yoga. All of this can really open the emotional neurowiring and work out subtle complications caused by traumas faced during one's developing years. Things which cause muscular armoring, tension, and neurotic control. A big problem for people in this world as a totality, as I see it, is a fear of misdirecting energy. Once again, you can't blame them. We see this reflected in the way we make love. People are afraid to surrender to each other in love because such a total surrender is assumed to involve a deep commitment on the part of both partners. It shows some sort of weakness, or people assume it will plunge them into a dependency on the other person. For some reason, people just can't drop off all their memories and make mad ecstatic love like naked spirits without bringing a bit of each other home with them. It seems that one of the primary obstacles to surrendering is the mistaken belief that you can actually lose yourself in fusion. This fear seems to be based on a deep primal feeling that to love is and be loved is a form of sort of psychological cannibalism. Of course, whatever is lost of you is only a process of transformation in the end. You will still be you after love's fusion, only a you which may have been refined by love's dissolving psychological melting pot. I believe that there is a divine love in between all the phases of earthly love. All the faces of men and women are just data in the matrix anyway. They're just little karmic fishes in the ocean of your world, which you have no control over. You just gotta let Ganesha send them your way. They're all the same fish, mem, the same flesh, the same Shiva moving about in Shakti's myriad material forms and dresses. Why not surrender to the thing which is in between all the phases, the secret lover in them all? It is the only love there has ever been. You might as well join the party, get hitched on the boat, and feel the drag of the current behind you. It's Krishna, the same one it's ever been, the pivot of the seasonal wheel of cosmic energy. To praise Krishna is to praise everything and nothing. This is the Taoist way. People praise Krishna with Hare Krishnas all day long as a mantra. They are celebrating the fact that no matter what direction they spend their energy in space-time, it happened because it was meant to happen. There's nothing to do after the fact except to be present in the next mind moment and move on. This is the kind of loving surrender which is conducive to a deep yoga, an influx of energy, when one begins to surrender to their ecstatic nature within. This sublime mirror of Mercury comes to reveal the true will in the self if one can be objective about it. When a person realizes their true will within, beyond their mammal monkey mind, they can surrender to it and start to clip away all the psychic snags in their lives, which are leaking their energy in acute and unnecessary ways and which distract the true expression of their heart's potential. This has to be balanced with intellect, obviously. But intellect has a funny way of obstructing the divine flow of things when it is the sole object of intention. That's kind of a problem of mine, personally. I have a way of thinking about things to the point that I am removed from the action of it, and I don't let things go, just go as they are. Sometimes, anyway. Besides, the expression of the true Tao is intelligent anyway, in the same way that bees and flowers work unconsciously together as limbs of a singular body in nature, and their unintentional symbiosis portrays Gaian intelligence. We have that same equipment built into us. Our relationships to each other and to the things in this world are similarly connected to an inherent organism intelligence of the planet and to the universe, if only we will trust it. To me, this is what bhakti yoga and worship are really all about. Getting beyond one's neural wiring, pressing one's heart through the shales and mud of yesterday in order to attain objectives which the mind's illusion would not allow. This faith-based action has the swing of the moon on it and can lift the spirit to dire heights. So, in a way, when I mention this surrendering nature, or self-sacrifice as Ram Dass called it, I want people to see it as an expression of Wu-Tsing metal. Metal is the alchemical foil left behind after a fiery fusion with desire in the forge of time. If you hone in on your psychological metal element and intently express that chi, the focused expression of your will, you clip the ever-spurting wood element in all of its appetite. and that's wood or passion, and it's of course another cosmic element with good and bad extremes. Just as purely focusing on expressing the steel will without considering other factors is also dangerous. Like I said, I'm a metal ram, and I'm too willful sometimes. I need to learn to relax and chill out in earthy centeredness once in a while. Alchemy is forever a balancing act, or else there would be nothing to transmute. If we want to take advantage of the mystery behind the human ego, our unconscious energy, and all the elements of the psyche, we need to be skeptical about our skepticism every once in a while, and we need to try surrendering our energy to these cosmic conscriptions of character and talent, if only as a soul experiment. For it is in surrender to symbols that we come to attain gnosis and self-awareness of our true will, by deducing which symbols actually correspond with our nature and which don't. Before people should surrender to something, they should obviously work it out for themselves. And that's why I'm saying, obviously, I'm not trying to advocate that you check out astrology just because I told you to. You should never surrender to anything that you don't have some sort of intuitive feelings of guidance toward, and that you don't fully understand. It's like submitting marriage to a love partner you've just met. So, what I'm trying to say is that I don't advocate that you completely submit to astrology here, folks. All I'm saying is that you should take her out for coffee and see what she's like. You might find her at her worst fascinating, and at best, the goddamn truth. So I want to finish off by getting back to this question of whether astrology is truly fatalistic or not. Astrology is not totally predetermined where our action is concerned, any more than a dancer is subordinate to the choreography of their dance. The steps of the dance should not be seen as an annoying mold to have to conform to, but rather as an essential gift to the dancer seeking to develop, just as astrology is also a gift. It is an opportunity to guide one's steps in the light of natural grace. There's a time to strike and a time to pitch in baseball and in any sport. The timing and rhythm is what gives the game its edge. It is the reason players can script rules and individual functions for each other. To ignore the rules is to diminish one's glory in the game. Anyone can make their own rules that fit their own talent and then beat everyone else at the game. Yet it takes real skill to go against a set universal standard equal to everyone else. I guess I'm getting at that to ignore the cosmic laws of the nature of things that have always been is to play the game badly, to ignore the rules. The so-called rules are there to sharpen the game. As was already mentioned, it was cute and fresh when our Western consciousness joined the planetary dance floor and we started flailing our hips and doing the monkey with no sense of rhythm outside of our own heart's spontaneity. Everyone else surely got a laugh out of it for a while. But no doubt, the masters of the cosmic dancing arts, the ancestral sages, have had their fingers crossed, hoping that the West, with all our energy, our youthful vitality and promise and science, would soon grow up out of our wayward rebel seeking, learn the rhythms of the ancient dance, and align with divine nature, instead of drunkenly bumping into everybody else at the party. Lord knows that North America has caused a lot of oil spills, environmental damage, bad patriotic territorial vibrations, and other disturbances since we arrived on Earth's scene. In our appetite for wild, free-form, ecstatic jazz, which has its place when it's done properly, we have reduced the reputability of the whole joint and turned life itself into a mockery, a drunken sailor's ramble with no substance, purpose, or explanation, other than the fact that my rich daddy, meaning Europe, science, bombs, and a history of enslavement and exploitation of poor countries on America's part, says that I can. America is Europe's spoiled child. We can only speculate what will take place when the family wealth becomes ours to squander. With the name we've made for ourselves and the lack of refinement in our dance, we could easily become that sad sap bum sipping whiskey at the bar's edge in the future, while all the other players who have conscripted to a refined choreographed script, show us up, because we'll have nothing to show for ourselves except for some sad, drunken ambling in the obsolete facade of the classic American spirit of conquest. What should happen is that we, with our vital youth and new world potential intact, should bow our heads humbly and seek a modest teacher in the hidden keystone of nature's sublime patterns, laws, and rhythms, perpetuating endlessly through time. Divine Mother's elements are the same guru that has ever been. Ganesha has not gone anywhere. The ancestral symbols and sigils of olden times retain the same bones of this timeless cosmic message. It is our duty to decipher for ourselves, as children in a new dawn, what of the ancestral wisdoms and knowledge from back then are now obsolete and which are timelessly relevant. We don't need to bow at the feet of India to become enlightened, because India did not bow at the feet of anyone but Krishna, the ecstatic, transcendental principle beyond worldly form which is always there. India didn't look at the finger pointing at the moon. They looked beyond the symbols to see what the finger was pointed at, the ethereal spinning and turning orb itself, the moon itself. That should be our policy, to look at the message of the cycles of energy and our place in them. But that will only happen when the West humbly listens rather than speaking, when we loosen our security-grasping grip on our empirical ego, which seeks not to bow its head, but instead to exalt itself proudly in a feat of false conceit, out of our fear of for any moment not being the centrifugal pivot around which the world solely revolves, individually as well as nationally. We are gods, yes. We are infinitely... I want to do that again because I skipped that one thing. All right, I tripped there. That should be our policy, to look at the message of the cycles of energy and our place in them. But that will only happen when the West humbly listens rather than speaking, when we loosen our security-grasping grip on our empirical ego, which seeks not to bow its head, but instead to exalt itself proudly in a feat of false conceit, out of our fear of for any moment not being the centrifugal pivot around which the world solely revolves, individually as well as nationally. We are gods, yes. We are infinitely potent, yes. But Shiva is nothing without Shakti, his consort, and a god is nothing without some dimensional plane and some form in order to reflect its will. There's a way to churn the psychological and cosmic elements out of which we are all constituted so that they realign themselves under our will to reflect beauty, truth, and love. But we cannot deal with our psychic energies if we do not have a way to objectify them. Astrology is the gift of nature's choreography to man, her eternal cosmic dance partner. Astrology presents us with formulae for the ancestrally conceived architecture of matter and human will over time. Not some willy-nilly arbitration, but a sound, numerically derived, empirical metaphysic for the tantric extension of light out of the cycles of black matter, meaning for the use of each individual psyche energy in a way that generates the most bliss bang for every material buck of human consciousness. True planetary freedom is not a question of liberated personal ambition. It's a matter of collective ambition correlated transpersonally, even transecologically, over time for best effect. For we are all individuals sharing in the communion of a psychedelic mind object called life, the scope of whose conception includes our ancestors, ourselves, and the children of our future in all races, classes, and even species. The cosmology of the sublime elements of materia provides us with a keystone of meta-geometrical principles of truth for the subject, for a person, based on a dialectical philosophy of energy, which can provide a useful universal science of energy matter with which to harmonize our divergent human wills and purposes into a coherent whole, without impinging on the destiny of each person personally, without dulling the personal edge. I perceive that astrology has revealed to humanity in recent years the true state of our will and what that means for us as beings connected ethereally to the fabric of the all. Lon Milo Duquette and the Crowleyan crowd have noted quite prophetically that man has entered into a new aeon and the dawning of the Aquarian Age. Duquette, an LA-based Kabbalist, notes in his book, Angels, Demons, and Gods of the New Millennium, the individual is now to be recognized as the primary and preeminent unit of society. It is now possible for humanity to awaken to the fact that each of us is a star, as unique and self-radiant as our celestial counterparts. Instead of desperately trying to determine the will of God and then clumsily attempting to cooperate with it, each of us must now come to realize that our will, if properly executed, is already in harmony with the divine will. In other words, in this age, the holy quest is to discover one's own way, rather than trying to guess what a God wants for you and hoping from moment to moment that you are guessing correctly. That's the end of the quote. To paraphrase this in my own words, man's mission has evolved as our perception has changed with the paradigm of time. In the Piscean Age, man was subject to the will of a God who was separate, whose pure intention was to overtake the crude animal mind and soul and supposedly replace it with divine vibrations. In Pisces, our posture was one of subservient bowing to an abstraction. Now that we have hopefully, though not entirely evidently, learned from that last lesson, we can proceed to the next lesson of humanity, which is to submit not to some outer source out there, but to the divine will within, our true inner will, which is ours and God's very own, as we are sprites of the eternally radiant, omnipotent cosmic source. I like to think of this to mean, from a psychedelic standpoint, that our future self, which is transpersonal and omniscient, is reaching back here into memory and trying to solve the knots in its own cosmic body retroactively through subtle messages within each person's DNA. The transcendental object at the end of time, i.e. Terence McKenna's eschaton, is already a state of pure energy, the cosmic scrap bin where all form goes. It cannot heal into the future, it cannot project into the future. It can only peel back here and wake us up from ahead. It is cosmic gravity which the Tao in us seeks to unwind itself toward. Listen within. Our true nature within is divine, if only we can learn how to understand it, feel, and align with it, to dissociate it from the neurotic programs in the monkey mind, and to dissolve the fleeting ego image of ourselves that we keep perpetuating and getting bent out of shape over down here in samsara, so that we identify as what we or it has always been, which is individuality seeking bliss in a perpetual continuum of unified energy. Kundalini awakening starts with the unknotting of the blockages that prevent our truest, deepest, blissful surrender of the mind and the divine whisperings of the soul within. But this must be in keeping with pragmatic materialism and biological need, at least to the extent that we don't kill each other while tightrope walking on the edge of the abyss of sanity and social coherence. The only way that we can find the walls of what is truly acceptable to spirit is to ride the beast and push the envelope while still listening to the feedback of the tribe, so that the tribe doesn't kill us vagabond, renegade spiritual warriors like it has done to so many others before us. There are many walking this path now. If you are walking that path, know that you do not walk it alone. Find the others. We are stronger in numbers. But when you find yourself alone, as you often will in this sublime struggle, always know that we are with you somewhere, psychically connected, trying to fuse and to forge the world into a proper holy grail for the carriage of the mysterious well water of bliss from within. Good luck. Thank you. Thanks a lot to Alex and Dylan for listening to me rap about my shtick for a little while. And thanks for everybody for listening.
Are we still good?
Okay, so now I guess we'll just rap about what we just talked about. If anybody's got any ideas or any cool things to add to the discussion,
Well,
we'll rap about it.
well, you just so happen to have another Terrence McKenna fan in the audience here.
Yep.
So when you were talking about the eschaton, I'm a fan of that theory, and I know what it means, but you didn't really explain it. So, like, if I mean, for anybody that doesn't know Terrence McKenna or the eschaton, I think there could be a little bit of
Yeah, I guess
clearing
a
up there.
background check there.
Yeah. What is the eschaton?
Yeah, I guess he describes it as the word eschatological is supposed to mean the end of things, the end of something. The eschatology of something is finding the end of it, of whatever it is. So the eschaton is like an object that implies that it is supposed to be the end of space-time, I guess, but
Or maybe time as we know it?
maybe this particular picture frame of it,
Yes.
because time obviously is infinite. It's a cycle, it's a circle that's going to always keep going.
Yeah.
But it's like a pure, well, the way I'm describing it in this lecture is like a pure form of energy, either prior to or after or whatever. Energy has come out into specific infinite varieties of form.
Right.
It's kind of just like pure atomic energy, or like living isness itself.
Yes.
And the word the eschaton implies that there's a space-time dimension of it. It's like kind of like a black hole, in the same way that a black hole in space is, it sucks in matter. We could say that the eschaton is a black hole that sucks in time.
So it's a fourth dimensional black hole. But like in a fourth dimension, it wouldn't be a hole. It's really hard for us to like. We
Yeah.
can only theorize with the fourth dimension because like that's when we start like realizing that we can't actually fully grasp the fourth dimension. All our representations have been like three-dimensional representations, and that's
Which
not
is
actually the fourth
Not
dimensional.
accurate.
The way I see it, like if all matter is energy condensed to a slow vibration, then you can really look at stuff like water, or sound, like as a form of waves. So if they can reverberate and bounce off something, then I guess the eschaton is where they would bounce off of.
Or towards or
Yeah.
from. Yeah, that's interesting. Because I'm thinking of the eschaton as being, I mean, if it's something in the fourth dimension, so to say, everything is kind of, everything down here in 3D that we perceive time going by moment to moment, it's always kind of touching that fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is kind of, it's like an omniscient eye hole for everything that comes out in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, I feel that. So it's like, it hasn't happened yet, but yet it's happening right now, and like that's the only way. Like if it's reaching back to us, it hasn't happened yet, but yet we were getting residuals from it, and that's a really hard concept to grasp.
Yeah, like for me, I guess I'm trying to describe the eschaton. I mean, it's hard to describe it in terms of space and time, because for me, I guess I'm trying to get at the concept as something as regards the transmigrating soul, which is transmigrating from whatever life to life. So it's more like a karmic completion of whatever incompleteness constitutes a soul, as it kind of goes through the silt of different incarnations and material realities, it slowly comes to brush off everything which is not that pure energy. And we all contain maybe our own, just like every space-time expanse has a black hole which contains the black matter that is kind of the central reflection of all the light that we see.
Right.
Each soul has a eschaton black hole in the time sense, which is both a reflecting, experience for the subject, for the person, but is also pulling time into itself.
Okay, so we're either a product of the eschaton, or a part of the eschaton, or is it that we each have an eschaton?
That's kind of more what I'm getting at. The black hole is the bodily black hole that we see in space, whereas each of us are running towards our own eschaton within. It's pretty speculative the way I'm getting at, because it implies karma, reincarnation, and the evolutionary changes in the soul that congeal life after life and eventually filter into that ideal pure energy that exists on the other end.
Because I always thought of the eschaton as like one big thing for like the whole human race kind of thing. And the irony of like a transcendental object implies like it's an object that's tangible, but yet it's
contained within the firmament of everything.
Yeah, like if it's a transcendental object, then it's like it's material but also not kind of thing.
Right.
But
because any form is not the transcendental object.
But yeah, like I could totally see what you mean. Like by like there could be like just personal eschatons that might, like a lot of times we try to think about like others and stuff like that, and like we try not to be selfish or whatever, but yet it is ultimately a personal journey, because we only know what it is like to be one person at a time, I guess.
It's almost like we're talking about two different aspects of energy itself. There's the material matter aspect of space-time, matter and energy, which I guess you could say has an eschaton, in the same way that the Big Bang was the start of the light in this dream bubble. As I said, the Brahma is the creation god in Hindu. It creates these little dream bubbles of material realities, and the Big Bang was like the white synapse of sensation for this particular expression of reality in this particular space-time nexus.
So would the Big Bang be an eschaton or the opposite?
It's the reflection of it.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of trippy when you think about it.
Kind of like when the circle starts to loop, or like meets itself at the end.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Because like there's no pattern to a circle, like, which makes me think that it's just overlapping itself, and it's actually like a spiral that we're looking perfectly down on.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like the nature of infinity is that it's going to go through every shale of possible existence that possibly could be conceived of.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And so I guess the eschaton is just the left and right of the picture frame, Yeah. It's the, even each Big Bang contained universe is just an infinity in itself, because it can just go on forever, because it's a part of it all. But nonetheless, since there is an individual conception for each quantum digression, that has to have some kind of firmament to it, a space-time three-dimensional block off where the fourth dimensional gate opens the light of what could possibly be.
Yeah, kind of like the source of the projection.
Right.
And it's got to be projected onto something.
In a particular one.
Yeah, because there's that one of the first theories about like the affinity was that like the theory of like you this it shows the, what are those baby angels called?
Cupid or...
Yeah, kind of like a Cupid, but
Yeah.
like you know, there's not actually Cupid, just like a baby angel,
Right.
and it's shooting the arrow in space, and the theoretically the arrow will go on forever until it hits an obstacle. Now you go up to that obstacle and grab the arrow out,
And then
you
that'll be
shoot
a
it
wall.
again,
Yeah.
and it will just keep going on forever until it hits another obstacle.
Totally. We were talking about this the other day, you know, if there is some kind of primary creator for everything that is, who created that creator? Or,
Yeah.
you know, if there's a source for everything, like a singular source, what created that? If the, let's say, for example, if the Big Bang were really the genesis of everything.
Yeah, if this were a picture frame, then we're on someone's wall.
Right.
So to speak, you know, it wouldn't be that simple. I mean,
Right.
you have to take it with a grain of salt that it is inconceivable, but we're trying to conceive the
Trying to,
inconceivable
yeah, we're
here.
trying to speak the ineffable, right?
Yeah,
It's the fun of being a mystic poet.
yeah. But I think the theory has validity, and it's not just
Terence McKenna's eschaton is a very space-time contained one, in the sense that like everything that material reality is conspired toward here, like his eschaton has a lot to do with his what's it called, time wave theory,
yeah,
where
which
novelty is progressing into a further expanse point.
yeah, and like I never fully understood his time wave theory, but like he did mention like, or as a source of evidence of the eschaton was human evolution, is that like it's speeding up.
Right. You know, it was 100,000 years ago for the agricultural revolution. It was 50,000 years ago for clothing and cultural fabrication, textile evolution. Then we got onto industrialization, and then we got into digital, and all these things are shorter and shorter expanses of time.
Yeah, and our advent of computers, we're just we just got into the waters, and like already all our doors are blown wide open.
Totally.
And I think it'll take people by surprise just how limitless these computers are, and I think very soon it'll be very hard to distinguish what's virtual and what's real. And
It's already hard.
yeah, and Timothy Leary's concepts of smile, space migration, intelligence increase,
Intellect squared, and then
what's
life extension.
the life extension?
Yep.
If our brains are just electric hardwiring, that it could be possible maybe that we could upload our consciousness onto a database and then exist on just frequencies, and there will be no distinction between imagination and reality.
Maybe that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, and not really know it, and
Yeah, maybe.
that could even be the eschaton, that we're creating it and we don't even know it.
That's kind of trippy. Like, I always think that we're like an avatar for someone playing Sims on Sirius 9 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And maybe the eschaton is the point when that avatar gets bored and goes to take a piss or go to the fridge. You know what I mean?
Or just quits the game.
Yeah.
Hits save.
And then goes into his real world. And then who's he an avatar for?
Yeah, like I think a lot of people well, sorry, not a lot of people. I showed this one guy psychedelics for the first time, and and he was saying how like it feels like everything was just like kind of like placed here, kind of as if it was like an avatar from The Sims or whatever. Like all the trees were just kind of like placed there, and we're just kind of like in our like habitat. And,
Yeah, there's something that's it's like an intelligence that's already there.
like an alien ant farm.
Yeah, yeah,
Or it's a zoo.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
A giant galactic zoo.
yeah. I like to think of it as like almost like a gymnasium for the same consciousness that's ever been.
Yeah.
We're all here to fucking lift against the ground, perform a kind of judo trick of projecting the muscles away from the ground in order to increase some kind of spiritual muscle.
Right.
It's funny, we were talking with my buddy the other day about the possibility of there being alien agencies that are kind of like farming us. You said like alien ant farm, right?
Right.
We're being farmed for some kind of nectar of some sort. It's funny, you know,
Yeah. Maybe just energy itself.
yeah,
I think. I
like-
think it's more like the entertainment thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
novelty.
Yeah. Like. There are like really like boring aspects of our lives, but like, I don't know. Like there's
There's
quite a lot of-
transcendence available.
Yeah, there's like quite a bit of excitement to our lives too. Maybe we're just creating it through like just ideas of eschaton, just to make it like a little bit more
Palpable.
interesting. But
Yeah.
like, the human exploration is, that we've never reached any limits to it.
Yeah, totally.
We're constantly reaching new grounds.
And human consciousness is always going to come out on any planetary system where, I mean, I was just saying that I think that our galactic alignment with all the planets the way they are is not a coincidence. Like they say, for example, that your root chakra, your chakra at the base of your spine is a red chakra, and that relates with Mars. Mars is the planet of
Yeah.
conquest and animal, mammalian instinct.
Yes.
You go higher up, they say that like the heart chakra relates with Libra, and it's green, and it relates with air, and it relates with you being able to breezily interrelate with your fellow beings. So Libra is ruled by Venus, and so Venus kind of correlates with that chakra.
So it's like compassion? Is that the
Yeah,
word?
compassion. Yeah, I mean there are probably higher spiritual compassions, but I guess compassion's a good way to look at like the air symbol.
Yeah.
But the point is that even Mercury, Mercury is a funny thing. It's the closest planet to the sun. It's the fastest planet, and it is the closest thing to feeling our desires. Everything, it's like you have a desire in the sun, and it has to connect through your neural membranes of your body in order to be expressed. And Mercury, the planet in astrology, is said to be a metaphor for the nerves, the feeling in the body. So my point is that I would consider that our whole galactic schema of our planets and all their rotations and stuff is a preordained galactic script for human consciousness. Any human consciousness that's going to come about is going to have the planets in the particular way that we have our planets.
I
Yeah, go
think
ahead.
I think it's believable because like everything in our universe is relative. I mean, everything from atoms to stars to what we do here on Earth is all in like orchestration. And I don't think one is not separate from the other when you're talking about big and small. And like I agree with that. It's
Yeah,
like
I guess like that's my point, that it's almost like our galaxy is a smile in the Timothy Leary sense, space migration, intelligence squared, life extension. Or no, what was it? I said Holmes. Tim Leary has an anagram for
Yeah.
Holmes, which is high orbital mini Earths.
Yes.
And so our galaxy is just another construction from the eternal Gaian consciousness that's ever been, in order to create biological beings which can perceive time going by moment to moment and can look into each other's eyes in order to make love to itself.
Yep.
And we're just another one. We're just another time frame contained in one of Brahma's many dream bubbles, the closing eye of Ra, which is trying to get everything into the zero.
Yes.
Every possible quantum digression that could possibly be.
And that ultimate point that I think the universe is conscious
Absolutely.
in multiple degrees.
It's an
Like-
organismic organization.
Yeah. Like we play The Sims and a greater alien's playing Sims with us.
Right.
And in The Sims, I think you can... I'm pretty sure they can play The Sims in The Sims. They probably can. I
It's
wouldn't
so
doubt it.
psychedelic. Like, I was just thinking the other day of... I love Rick and Morty. Did you ever watch that show, Rick and Morty?
I want to more. I've always enjoyed everything I've
It's
seen. from it.
psychedelic as fuck.
I've seen like a few episodes and I want to see more.
They're really good, man. They're really good. So there's one episode where Rick is like this genius, and he can create fucking just all this crazy shit.
Yeah, like wormholes and all
Yeah,
that shit.
totally.
It's
And
just like, you gotta do this.
yeah, we're gonna do it, and they
Yeah.
just do anything that they
But you
can.
gotta- you
It's all
gotta-
Morty. Yeah, it's all multiverse theory, and it's very, very intelligent, like quantum shit. And there's one episode where Rick wants to create infinite energy, and he does this, and he puts it in his car, or his vehicle, whatever, his UFO thing that he drives around.
Yeah.
And Morty, I think, wants to know the nature of what creates this free energy. And Rick shows him, and it's a little planet which has denizens on it, which are enslaved, basically, but they don't know that they're enslaved.
What are
Denizens, citizens.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I mean, yeah.
Okay.
So there are citizens on this little planet inside of
Yeah.
Rick's car, and these citizens don't know that they're enslaved.
Oh, they have no idea they're a part of this engine.
Right. And
Yeah.
so Morty says, you know, gee, Rick, that's kind of fucked up, man. You know, this is, you're enslaving these people, and that's really kind of messed up. And then Rick's like, no, it's okay. They've got lives, they got jobs, they got community centers. They're, you know, they're just living regular lives just like we are. And what happens on Rick's little planet is that someone discovers the nature of the planet, and they try to devise their own way of having free energy. And what they do on what the genius on that little planet does is he creates a vehicle with an engine that's powered by a little planet, and that little planet has denizens on it that are enslaved in order to work for the energy of the vehicle. And a little alien on that planet finds the secret as well and does the same thing, you know?
So they're just all enslaving each other.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at, you know?
Right.
We're this little planet that's extracting nectar or energy for a consciousness, which is basically powering something.
Yeah, and this story has been retold in multiple different forms. Like when we used to think that the world was on the Earth's back, they'd be like, "Well, what's around the turtle?" Like, you know, like
Yeah, the turtle.
What's underneath the turtle is just another turtle.
A turtle?
And what's,
That's
and
so
what's,
psychedelic.
and what's below that?
Yeah.
Another turtle. And it's just like,
Oh, man,
well,
that's
when do they
far
stop? Oh, they go. It's just
Turtles
that way,
all the way down.
all the way to the bottom. Yeah.
That is so psychedelic, man.
And I think it's very much like Schrodinger's cat, that like we can have all these theories and they can all be true simultaneously, both and not them, you know. It's like we'll never guess it, and we might be guessing all of them at once, you know. It's
yeah, the both of the possibilities like exist of it not being that way or of it being that way.
yeah, like I don't think like it's these theories are crazy, but they're also can be true, and that's why they're so fucked up.
Yeah.
It's like you know, it's like funny, and you're like ha ha ha, oh wait, holy shit.
Oh yeah. Whoa,
Oh
holy
my
shit.
god.
What am I?
Oh, I'm on a turtle.
No doubt.
Okay, I'm gonna get a coffee.
Yeah, right on. That was cool. You think that's good, Dill?
Yeah, we don't want.
Hey, you're listening to Pluto's Corona's Cosmic Consciousness audio series, an Al Ginsberg production. We hope you enjoyed.
For more laughs, spirituality, astrology, and philosophical fun, check out my YouTube channel, How to Rock Spirit, where you can find old Ram
Don't forget about Dog.
at our best in stoned psychedelic discourses ranging from such far-out subjects as mysticism, tantra, and even terrestrial politics to UFOs, energy matter, and the infinite mother mind of cosmic intelligence.
Ginsberg here. Check out my label on Facebook at Rare Records, and check out Dustin's guitar teaching channel, How to Rock a Campfire, if you'd like to see more of us. Also, feel free to send us a message or drop us a comment. We'd love to hear from you.